Welcome to Real Talk with Tina and Ann. I am Tina.
And I am Ann. George, you and we go way back.
Way back.
Way, right. Pretty much all the way to our childhood
Yep.
in high school. You've always been someone that I've deeply respected and cared about. I just want to say for our listeners that you are probably one of the ones that I had the most fun with in high school. But that's not the reason that you're on the podcast. You're a highly respected journalist with over 40 years of experience in television, and your work has made a lasting impact. And fun fact, you actually know someone else on the podcast from your media Cleveland days.
Tina and I worked together at WEWS in Cleveland, at News Channel 5 back in the mid 2010s. And had a good time there. I was working as a producer there and MMJ, and I believe she was working on the web team there. And we would, worked in the same newsroom, talked a lot, and had a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, lots of good memories there. But I'll tell you, radio and behind the mic is more my thing, not in front of TV and that whole just that whole thing. So I'm much more comfortable like this.
I've been doing this a variety of different roles over the past 40, whatever 1983 is. I can't do math anymore, folks. Sorry about that. Off and on, in front, behind, either producing shows. These days, I'm doing a lot more on camera stuff. Comfortable pretty much wherever you want to put me. As long as I'm drawing a paycheck, I'm a happy boy. But, right now I'm drawing a paycheck essentially to go fishing and hunting and hiking and eating some crazy food and having a good time. So I can't complain about that.
That's amazing.
I just can't get over this Virginian accent. It just cracks me up. You have just taken that on and you own it.
Well, I'm originally from Akron, and my mom, like half of Akron's from West Virginia. So I always had a little bit of a twang. My wife is from Virginia, so I'm around it all the time, even when I wasn't in Virginia. I moved down here, and I think the accent kind of adopted me, as opposed to me adopting it. It just became part of who I am, and I'm real comfortable with the folks here, and I talk the way I talk. I mean, I'm sure if I moved to Minnesota, I'd probably get real tubular really quick too. So, it's kind of like wherever I am, that's the way I talk. It's just
this
kind
is
of
who
funny.
you are. This I just love this. There's there's so many parts to you, George. There's so many layers. Not only do you bring over 4 decades of experience in media, but you've carved out this unique path that you just kind of touched on the outdoors as a journalist out there in nature, reporting from water, chasing the catch of the day, hunting and covering everything from Michigan to Texas and wherever they send you, and including agriculture. Now, as long as I've known you, you've always had this personality to be in the spotlight. From your spot on John Belushi impression, which, by the way, is still the best John Belushi impression that I've ever seen, to your work as a highly respected and professional journalist in the newsroom. So that's where I kind of want to start this, from you being in the newsroom to now you're being an outdoor journalist. I mean, how in the world did that happen?
Well, let's backtrack all the way to how I got into TV and journalism.
Yeah.
It's because I was chasing a girl. I was a political science and economics major in college. I was planning on going to law school, and then I was going to go to Congress, and I was going to save the world. I'm still working on the save the world part. Never made it to Congress, didn't go to law school. While I was there, I started dating a girl who was a broadcast journalism major. She was always at the campus TV or radio station. I never got to see my girlfriend. So I started hanging out at the campus TV or radio station just so I could see my girlfriend. Next thing I know, I'm doing it for a living. Just one of those weird things where one dovetailed in the other, and it worked out. I went to school in DC, went to school at American University, swore I would never go back to Akron because, when you're 21 years old, you know everything, and you're, high and mighty and above everything, right? I'm not going back to Akron. First job I landed was right back in Akron at WAKR TV and radio. Doing radio primarily, also working on Channel 23. Spent 3 years there. Ended up going from reporter to producer and assignment editor, which gives you a whole different idea of how news operates. Doesn't just have to be TV. And so I went from being on the air and worrying about one story a day to producing newscasts and worrying about 30 or 40 stories a day and multiple reporters.
Oh
And
my.
then left Akron for Toledo, Ohio, worked for the ABC affiliate up there. I was there for almost 4 years. And I went from being a producer and assignment manager to being a news director. And I oversaw the whole news department. I was the youngest news director at a top 100 market affiliated station in the country.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was an experience. I was way too young, probably shouldn't have had that job, but I had it, so I did it. Left Toledo and went to Baltimore, Maryland as a producer, and worked my way up to a managing editor EP spot there. Ended up going to DC. Worked in DC for about 10 years in a variety of roles for NBC News, the NBC O&O there, WRC, WUSA, which is the Gannett station, a CBS station. And then finally Retirement Living TV, which was a startup cable operation. That was a lot of fun. And then the recession hit and kind of hit me kind of hard. I was freelancing, technically freelance. Freelance is just another word for I'm unemployed, but I'll work for you today and I'll work for you tomorrow. And I'll just, I did that for about a year and a half. That was rough. And then I kind of need to recharge my batteries. I need to get out of DC for a while. So I ended up in Charlottesville, Virginia. Now my wife, for the sake of transparency here, I've been married 3 times. I kind of look at my life in eras of wives, if that makes sense. This was my 3rd wife. I met her in Baltimore. She's from Virginia. She said, why don't we move back to Virginia? So I said, okay. So I ended up in Charlottesville, Virginia, and left Charlottesville after about 2 or 3 years. I ended up in Cleveland for about 4 or 5, ended up in Toledo for another 2 as an executive producer, and then said, I'm done with TV. I'm tired. I'm burned out. It happens. And I went to work for Cabela's as a product specialist and retail manager, and did that for about 2 years. And along the way, I mean, things happen that cause you to make decisions. I was happy at Cabela's. I'd still be there today if circumstances had been different. But my wife's father passed away. And she said, George, I don't want to miss anymore with my family. My family had passed. My brother he's still in Akron. He goes back and forth between Akron and Houston. But she said, I really want to get back to Virginia. I want to get closer to my mom. I said, no, that makes sense. So I started looking for jobs, and one day see an ad online for it was a managing editor job is what it was at the station where I am now. And I applied. About an hour later, I get a phone call. It's the news director from that station. She says, George, I don't want to, she goes, I hate when people are not honest with me. That position was posted, but it should have been taken down yesterday because we filled that job a couple days back. I don't really have anything for you that you might be interested in a management role. I said, well, what do you have open? She said, I have producer jobs open. I was like, okay, I'll be interested. So we went back and forth. We worked out a deal, and that's how I ended up back in Virginia here I'm at WFXR in Roanoke, Virginia. We're owned by Nexstar Media. Nexstar has been one of the best companies I've ever worked for. And they've given me the latitude to do a whole lot. They take what I do and they spread it out to a bunch of their different stations. Now, how I got into this is even funnier. I came down here as a producer. The person who hired me, unfortunately, was let go very shortly after I got here. They brought an acting news director in. I walked in one day and he calls me in. He goes, hey, I understand you have an outdoors background. And I did. I'd done some outdoors reporting. I did some freelance work. And of course, I worked at Cabela's. I said, yeah. He said, we're thinking about starting up an outdoors franchise. You interested? And I said, what would it entail? He said, whatever you want to make it. I'm like, yeah, I'm in. All right. And that took off. It's become one of our more popular segments. My stuff gets picked up all over the country. In fact, awesome. I have stations that actually request things in their markets. Then they called me and said, what do you know about agriculture? I said, not a darn thing. And I said, great. That's what we want. We want somebody who's going to ask the questions that the average consumer is going to ask a farmer. So I do a segment called On the Farm. I do Outdoors Bound, which is the outdoor segment. I do a segment called Big Old Fish. We just invite people to send their big fish pictures in. We scream big old fish a lot. I mean, it's a lot of fun. I'll send you a clip of that. You'll enjoy that. And then on the farm is consumer agriculture. And I also do something called My Virginia, which is a Virginia heritage segment. So it's all features. I still do hard news. A couple of weeks back, I went out and did a brush fire. A few weeks back, I went out and did, unfortunately, a heavy duty crime story. Keep my hands in the hard news, but I like doing features because my stories, with the exception of a fish here or there, no one dies. So
I'll tell you what, you have been everywhere, and it doesn't surprise me that you always rise to the top in every job that you've ever worked, and it always becomes excellent work.
I'm pretty fortunate in that I've been put in the right situation, but I've also had mentors who have taken me on. I mean, all the way back to high school when I needed. I was a big screw off in high school. You knew me as a class clown, Annie.
Yeah.
And I may have been smart, but I was always just, messing around. And we had a teacher. I never had her for a class, Mrs. Jamerson. Do you remember her?
I don't.
But anyways, I was doing my usual stupid stuff in the hall one day, and she walked up. I mean, you couldn't get away with it as a teacher these days, but she did back then. She walked up and she grabbed me by the shirt collar and she kind of turned me around and she put her finger in my chest, and she knew exactly what she was doing. I had no idea until later. Puts her finger in my chest. She goes, "You think you're so smart. Everybody talks about how smart you are. Well, you know what? You're just wasting it. You're not so smart after all." And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm going to show you who's smart." And so that was about midway through my junior year, and it lit a fire under me. And I went from being kind of like a just get by student to, an A and B student. I really pushed hard for that and turned it around. And that's how I was able to, I got into American kind of probationary. They liked my SAT score. I had a couple of teachers who wrote letters essentially saying he matured over the course of time. And so that explains his low GPA. It wasn't anything to be proud of, but they went to bat for me, and America says, "Okay, you got a semester to prove yourself." And here I am. I was fortunate to get into that school and do what I was able to do. And that set me up. I had profs there, I had friends there. And then once I got into the business, I had people who looked out for me. But along the way, I also, I ran into a variety of obstacles. I mean, the health issues and, like I said, I've been divorced twice. That ain't easy. It's just a matter of kind of, you got to have the mindset that whatever comes down the road is coming and you can't stop it. So you may as well try and make the best of it, no matter what that situation is.
Tina and I just had a podcast about this.
Reverse psychology works for George. Okay. And you got to make lemonade from lemons.
Right. Have y'all ever heard of a poet, Rainer Maria Rilke?
No.
He shared his wisdom with a bunch of different younger poets. And there's a quote of his that I kind of have adopted as my motto or mantra or whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to read it to you here. It says, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given you, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now, and perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer." And the first time I read that, I was like, yeah, that is it. That's life right there. That's my life. And I just think that sums it up. And so when things kind of get a little weird or, down, or I don't know what's coming, it's like, you're going to just have to live into that answer. That's the only solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just can't fight it. It's going to happen. It's going, and you just have to go with it. It's going with the stream, I guess, or going against it. So
the only way out is through, so to speak.
Oh, we say that all the time on the podcast. You want to be a regular?
We just read that. I read that to my youngest son and his friend today, 2 4-year-olds, going on a bear hunt. You can't go over it. You can't go under it. You just got to go through it.
Right.
I guess until you said that, I didn't really realize that maybe there's a life lesson in that book.
Yeah.
Well, I know, Anne, you've known George for a long time, and I know you wanted to talk about him growing up on the lake.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was going to ask you because, you did. That your house was right on the lake.
Right.
You were really into the outdoors from the very beginning. And I've noticed, and I've noticed how often life comes full circle. I mean, for Tina or for me even. I took my background in counseling. I blended it with my journalism career. And somehow that turned into a mental health podcast and overcoming and navigating life. And it was the same thing for you because you ended up taking your love for nature and your journalism, and they've kind of collided, I guess you could say. They've come together. And would you say that your passion and your profession have become one and the same?
Yeah, I'm passionate about journalism, even when it wasn't about the outdoors. But now that it is about the outdoors, it's something I embrace. I love coming to work. This is going to sound crazy, but I think about fishing probably every other second. And so now that I get to do it for a living, it is, it's just a dream come true. I mean, I couldn't ask for anything better, and you're right. I grew up fishing. I grew up on Rex Lake there in the Portage Lakes outside of Akron, Ohio. My father was a passionate outdoorsman. I got it from him. We would fish in the yard. And you've been in my backyard. You've been in the backyard of what was then my house. My brother actually lives there now. So, it's right there on the lake. We could fish, we could swim, we could boat, we could go play in the water. There were muskrats, ducks, rabbits, geese. They're always something.
Yeah.
I know what it's like, and Ann does too, like you, that being a journalist, it can be hard at times. And, I guess I want to know, how do you balance the joy of having these two, the profession and your passion combined, without losing the love for the passion side of it?
Well, that is an obstacle that arises from time to time. I mean, it's fun when it's a project. It's not so much fun when it becomes a responsibility. You kind of have to separate the two. Case in point, I did a story a week ago on fly fishing on the New River, which is a river down here, smallmouth bass. And it's like I get the work out of the way, so I got time to play. Almost compartmentalize. You have to be able to do that. And there are also times when I go on a fishing trip and I leave the camera alone. It's because you need to have that separation, that balance. And there are times when I go on a fishing trip just for myself. The other thing too is I step away. I like to read about what I do. I like to take a look at other people's work because it's more than just about catching fish. It's passion, joy in what you're actually doing, not just what the subject matter is. There. The other thing is I tend to be a very competitive person and creative at the same time. And so journalism, you're always trying to one up the other guy. You're always trying to one up your competition. So
that's true.
Yeah. So it's kind of like I like to win.
Yeah, I know that about you. One of the things.
Remember running into the hall, Annie, and we'd race, and you'd get mad though. We used to run laps. I was a senior and she was a sophomore, and she was getting ready for track season. We would run laps in the hallway during winter, and about once a week we'd race. And she does not like to come in second.
I let you win.
Oh, truth comes out.
She was good though. She knew. Yeah, she beat me a lot of times. So I couldn't. But when I lost, when she lost, she didn't like that at all. So
I never liked losing. That was just a thing. When I swam, it was the same thing. I mean, I let my kids win, but you have to do that.
Oh, you're nice. I don't do that. Not even my 4-year-old, I'm in it to win it.
Sometimes. Now that they're a little older, I don't, because you have to learn how to lose too. That's a good thing,
Right.
But I love that you have given yourself permission to be who you are, no matter where you're at. I mean, you have pivoted many times in your life. And I just love maybe you could talk a little bit about giving yourself permission on being with the flow, like we talked about a little bit ago, and just saying, you know what, I'm just going to go with it.
You have to be willing to accept that mindset. Some people, and this is no knock on them, they just have a hard time with it. Realize that you're a happier person when you take some time for yourself, when you do some things. That doesn't mean that you ignore anybody else's needs or the responsibilities in your life. If you don't do those little things for yourself, no one else is going to do that. And you find some release. You find, you're more relaxed. And if you do those things, you're actually a better person to the other people in your life.
Oh, yeah. I think
Oh,
you're talking about self-care.
Yeah.
And I think you're talking about how when you're in an airplane and they say, if those masks come down, you have to put yours on first before you can help someone else. You
mm,
definitely have to fill yourself up. So that's going to lead me into something I wanted to ask you, because for me, being outside and hiking and exploring and just watching animals is my thing. It's my jam. It just takes all the stress away. It's just my happy place. I could live outside in a tent, not in our climate per se, but like in Hawaii, maybe, if there was a restroom, as long as I had a regular restroom, that would be fine. But I wanted to ask you, what does being on the water offer that no other place can for you? Is it that refuge?
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. Water, or even just walking into the woods, a chance to be at peace, a chance
mm.
to kind of collect my thoughts. In fact, a chance to not think at all, just to be. And
Oh, I
yeah,
love that.
yeah, yeah. It's just you just are. That's where you are. There's a practice in Japan called forest bathing. Now it sounds like you're going to the woods to take a bath, but no, you're bathing yourself in the forest. And the research has shown that just by taking a 10-yard walk into the woods and stopping has a positive impact on your mental health, on your physical health, because your blood pressure immediately drops.
Mm,
And then once your blood pressure drops, that has a ripple effect. But then you also become more relaxed. You become more attuned to those things around you. Your focus becomes clear, and all it takes is a few minutes, and you get this huge health benefit. Now, I didn't know that when I first started going into the woods or onto the water. All I knew is I felt good. I felt better. I may have been having the worst week, and I hit the trail, or I'd hit the water, and suddenly, after an hour long, 2 hour, 3 hour long trip, none of that mattered. I felt
mm,
better.
Yeah,
And
water
then
is cleansing,
yeah,
nature is cleansing.
it
Yes.
sure is.
and when I felt better, then I was a better person, and I did better things, and I did better at my job, and I was a better dad and a better husband, and just a better all
Mm,
around person. The benefits of just, and there again though, you have to give yourself permission to do that. Getting back to what we were talking about
right,
on the
right.
other question. So yeah, you get out there. It's solitude. It is a refuge, and I would urge everybody just to take the time. Just even if it means, if you've got a little wooded place in your backyard, walk out there and just kind of hang out. Or you got a park, you got some green space, go do it. See if there's not a difference. I mean, if what do you got to lose?
Well, I grew up in the trees.
Uh,
I would climb the trees. I loved being in my backyard, and it really did make a difference in how I felt. And if I just go out and I connect with the trees for some reason, I've even written poetry about trees, and just being in their presence and the silence. There's nothing like that kind of a silence.
right, right.
Yeah.
And it's not really silence. I mean, it can be dead quiet, but the sound of your head, the sound inside your head, kind of gets to come to the forefront. You actually get to hear yourself a little bit.
Well, if you had your one perfect outdoor day, where are you? What are you doing? And who are you with?
All right. If I had that one day, when I was a kid, we would go up to Quebec. We'd go to a place in Quebec. It was a lake called Sand Lake. And my father, again, he was the one who instilled this passion for the outdoors. If I had that one day, I would like to go fishing there with him. Um,
Oh,
just the memory of my father and the impact he had on my life. He was my teacher. He was my dad. He was my protector. He was such, I mean, he's larger than life. I mean, and you met my dad. He was a nice guy, but he was a good man,
mm,
and he was a solid individual, and he was wise, and the time spent with him meant so much then. And if I could have that one day, oh man, I'm getting kind of choked up talking about stuff.
I
But
can
yeah,
tell.
yeah.
I think that's so beautiful. And sometimes, as much as it's sad to see people we love who've passed on and then to read about people who've died, I feel like one of the things that's so beautiful is reading what people write about them in the obituaries. I just find them, you feel like you really get to know someone, and man, you can see how they're missed so much. So I want to know, George, your most outrageous or unexpected experience while on assignment of any kind. It doesn't just have to be with the outdoor journalism, any assignment, because boy, do I have a doozy.
There are a handful of them. When I was working in Akron, working with a photographer by the name of John Dix, and he and I got sent up to what was then the old Bureau of Criminal Investigation office in Twinsburg. Now we were driving up there and we look over and we see all this smoke coming out of a building. John says, I think that place is on fire. I said, I think you're right. So we get off the exit there and drive up there, and there's no fire trucks or anything around. We're like, that's crazy. So this is back in the days before we had 911. This is 1983, 84. I don't remember the exact date, but
I thought you were going to say like 1805.
well,
Oh my
it
God.
feels like it sometimes.
Right.
But anyway, he gets on the two-way, calls the station. They call the fire department, send them the address. So I decide I'm going to go let people know that their building is on fire. So I run up this because the smoke was coming from the upstairs and there's like multiple units.
Oh my gosh.
So I run up the steps, and as soon as I get to the door, I think I could open this door and a fireball could come shooting out. And that is not good for anybody. So I reach down, I do what, remember learning about, touch a doorknob if something's on fire. And I didn't, the doorknob was cool. So I opened the door up kind of slowly, and all this smoke comes out at me, but fortunately no fire. So I go up, run back and forth, knocking on doors, telling people, hey, your building's on fire. How they didn't smell the smoke, I don't know. But as soon as they'd open the door, they'd see the smoke. Oh my gosh, what's going on? So they'd grab their stuff and they head out. Finally, I get up to this one door and it's barely cracked open. And I push the door open and I look inside and I see a silhouette standing in the smoke. I said, hey, ma'am, you got to get out of here. The building's on fire. And she goes, I know. And I was like, oh. So I walked into the doorway and immediately felt heat all around. I looked up, the ceiling was on fire. The walls up top are on fire. Things are smoked out. I walked in. I said, ma'am, you got to come in. I'm thinking she's in shock. I'm thinking, and I hear another voice, an adult voice. And there's a woman saying, she goes, we can't. I said, sure you can. Come on, let's go. And she goes, no, we can't because of the baby. I said, baby? She goes, it's too cold outside for the baby. I said, it's too darn hot in here. I said, where's the baby?
Oh my
And all of a
gosh.
sudden I hear, I look over, the baby's laying, they got the baby laying in a chair. So I grabbed the baby. I said, you all can stay in here, but I'm taking this baby outside. I grabbed the baby and I start walking out the door, and these ladies are following me and they're just yelling at me about how we can't go outside because it's too cold outside. And I got outside. As soon as I got outside, the fire department pulled up and I handed the baby to a firefighter. I said, you better check this kid out because he's been sucking smoke for, God knows how long. And these ladies yelling at me. And anyway, as it turns out, everybody was okay. And this happened to be just a fire that it was accidental and food on the stove. But that was one of the weirdest things that ever happened to me on the job, where I went in and, that was kind of nuts. Now, there have been some other things that have happened where, but yeah, that was about the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me that I can talk about.
Right.
There you go.
And we have to talk about this one. So Ann and I were covering a capital murder trial one time. And we would always, you're at the courthouse for so long, and I was young and I was engaged at the time and I had a ring on and everything. And you'd always just have to eat really in the courthouse because there's not a whole big gap between testimony. So we always ate together. And one day the defense attorney was walking downstairs and Ann and I were just sitting there eating. And he was like, hey, can I talk to you? And I feel like I looked at you, Ann, like, am I allowed to talk to him? And I'm like, I'm like, what in the world could it be? Because I'm not even sitting in the courtroom. There was a media room for this particular trial. So that's where I was spending my time. So he asks me if I want to go with him to Cirque du Soleil. And I was like, I go back and Ann's like, well, what did he want? And I was like, Ann, he asked me out on a date. I said, I'm practically married. I'm here covering this capital murder trial. And this guy's saying how he has 2 tickets to Cirque du Soleil and do I want to go? I felt like because I was a young reporter at the time that he thought maybe like money or something was going to win me over. And I was appalled. I was so embarrassed. You remember that, Ann?
Oh, I absolutely remember that. It was hilarious.
I was like,
And
what?
you ended up, because he was consistent. I mean, that
He
wasn't
was
the only time.
consistent.
Yeah. I mean, you ended up having to tell him a few things.
My goodness. So isn't that fun? That was like one of the craziest things I remember. Like, shouldn't you be focusing on what you're going to be saying next? Not, hey, I've got 2 tickets to Cirque du Soleil. I was like, wow. No, thank you. No means no. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. Well, I know, Anne, you want to talk about maybe some personal growth
Yeah.
and healing with George
I
next.
wanted to get a little bit more personal, George. I remember in high school, you had this thing, and it was either a sucker you always had in your mouth, or I think it was a sucker, not a toothpick. I'm not really sure, but I remember that you actually substituted, if I could say it this way, one vice, a healthier vice, for an unhealthy one. And you learned back then how to do that. So I thought that maybe that we could talk a little bit about your health journey and what that struggle has looked like for you.
Oh man, yeah. Well, I was substituting for cigarettes because I smoked.
Yeah.
And I'd get in the car and light up. I don't know. I was an athlete too, which was kind of weird. I don't know how the heck I was able to sustain. I played football, I wrestled, played baseball, depending on the year in high school. Played football all 4 years, but I smoked. I don't know how I was an athlete and smoked at the same time, but I did. I mean, when you're young, you're bulletproof, so you don't think anything of it. But I continued to smoke up until actually 2001. And it's one of the biggest regrets I have in life. I wish I never started. And I started because I thought, as dumb as this sounds, and you always hear it, I thought that it was what, some of my cool friends were doing. So I wanted to be like them.
Mm.
And so I did. And I thought, well, I can always stop. In fact, can I tell them that you were my prom date?
Yeah.
We were friends. Annie and I were friends all through high school. And she went to
Yeah.
winter formal with him, and she was my prom date. But I had this white tuxedo on. Maybe we'll show them the picture of the tuxedo. Anyway, and I had a pack of Marlboro Reds that were right in the front of that front pocket of that tuxedo. I'm like a big idiot. Like you could see right through the pocket. But I was smoking probably about a pack and a half a day, and it went up to about 2 packs a day as things progressed. But I wish I would have never started. I wish I had never started. That was one of the biggest regrets because it led to other issues. For a long time, I didn't have the lung capacity to exercise the way I probably should have. I was working as a producer and assignment editor, so I was pretty sedentary, sat behind a desk most of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So on top of the cigarettes, I started to gain weight. I went from about 210, 215 in high school and college up to almost 400 pounds at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And smoking and just not living a very healthy lifestyle and eating just poorly. It got kind of hairy there. And finally, I was working in Akron. I'd been carrying all this weight around. I quit smoking in 2001, a week before 9/11 happened. How I didn't start smoking, I don't know. That was a good thing. They were happy about that. I couldn't, no matter what I did, the weight stayed on. In fact, it got worse. And I just wasn't exercising, wasn't doing anything. I was, working inside most of the time. Couldn't be a very effective father when my kids wanted to play. Couldn't be a very effective husband a lot of times because I was either too tired or just, I was out of shape. It was not always the easiest person to be around. And then it was January of 2013. I went to the doctor. I was working at Channel 5 in Cleveland. My doctor was at Akron City Hospital, and she said, if you keep up like this, my blood sugar was out of control, my weight was out of control, my cholesterol was out of control, my blood pressure was out of control. She said, I'll give you maybe a year and a half.
Mm.
She goes, the trajectory is not good. I said, what do you suggest? She said, we're going to have to get aggressive. I said, what do you mean by aggressive? I said, I've tried every diet under the sun. She goes, aggressive. I'm talking about surgery, weight loss surgery. And so I had a Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. Here's the thing. They don't let you just get it. You don't just walk into the hospital and get this. They run you through a variety of medical tests. So they test your lung capacity, heart, bones. I mean, anything physical, but they also test you emotionally. And they have you go through counseling sessions so that they can assess where you are, what might be some of your issues that could be contributing to your weight, to your lack of success when trying to tackle that problem, and come up with strategies for doing something about that once the surgery is done. That journey started in January of 2013. September of 2013, the surgery was performed. They put you on a pretty strict diet for about 2 months before you even have the surgery. And the reason for that is they want to get rid of a lot of the fat around your liver, because it's easier for them to go in when they do the surgery, but it's also easier on your liver and gallbladder afterward. So I weighed probably about 378 pounds, and that's somewhere in that ballpark. And July of 2013, when they put me on it's almost like a fasting plan. It's a liquid diet. They give you, 2 months, and I dropped down to about 340. I'm sorry, 340. They give you it's kind of like your last meal. They give you one last meal about a week out from your surgery. Go ahead and eat whatever you want, because it's the last time you're actually going to be able to do something like this. And then I went in for the surgery, and within 24 hours after the surgery, my blood sugar had normalized, my cholesterol was on a downward trajectory, and my blood pressure had fallen into the normal range. After about 3 months, I came off of a variety of medications. I still remain on 2, but they are there as protective. One is that they run into an issue with people who've had the surgery having kidney issues. So they have me on a medicine. It's technically a blood pressure medicine, but it protects my kidneys. And then they have the other issue is that you can sometimes develop some pancreas issues. So they have me on a medication that essentially boosts my pancreas function. But that's it. I've lost, I now weigh about 230 pounds. So I've lost roughly 140 pounds.
That's fantastic.
You look great.
Oh, thank you.
And
I'm still not skinny, but I'm a heck of a lot better than I was. My blood pressure is under control. My blood sugar is under control. My cholesterol is under control. I exercise routinely. I'm in my job. I'm constantly up and down riverbanks and through woods and hiking. And I'm physically active. I'm probably in better shape now than I was in my 30s.
And you know how to cook.
I do know how to cook.
Your mom did. I mean, you definitely got it, honestly. And I see all of your cooking pictures and things like that. I mean, you know how to do it.
Well, my mom, you're right. I got my fishing passion from my dad. I got my cooking passion from my mom. My mother, we didn't realize this until after she had passed and we were going through her papers. She'd always talked about going to cooking school in New Jersey. Her story would make a great book. She just had this kind of wild ride life. But she was working as a domestic for a family in New Jersey, and they sent her to cooking school because they wanted somebody who could cook. What she never said was that it was actually a chef's school, and she had her certificates in culinary and in pastry, which, after I realized that, then I realized why she did some of the things she did in the kitchen. And I learned from her, and that's part of it. I still don't always do what I should eating wise. But I try to counter it elsewhere. And there are little tricks I can do in the kitchen that can dress up a dish so that you may not have the caloric impact, so to speak, that you might see otherwise. So,
well, it's probably because you want to be here, the best version of you, and be here for your family.
Yeah, absolutely. I like living. I like being alive. I like being a part of this. I hope I can do it for as long as I can. I had a dream. Told my wife, she stuck with me for a while. I had a dream that I lived to be 106. Fingers crossed, knock on wood. I told her I'm going to be a pain in her behind for a long time. But even if I wasn't doing what I was doing, my outlook on things is that, we're here, just make the most of it. Have fun.
Right.
You don't need a lot of money. You don't need, all you need are people that you love, and people who love you. And even if they don't, what's the most important thing is you love them. So,
well, and I wanted to transition into family and fatherhood questions for George, if that's okay.
Yeah, there's a sensitive topic that I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about right now, if that's okay with you, about your daughter's challenges.
Yeah.
If you could share a little bit about that.
My daughter, Rachel, she's my daughter from my first marriage. She's going to be 39 this year. She, back about 7 years ago, she was visiting a friend, spent the night, was not familiar with the house, thought the door to the bathroom. She had to get up in the middle of the night, dark. She thought she was opening the door to the bathroom. What she instead opened was the door to the basement. She went down the stairs, hit her head. Unfortunately, she was there for several hours without any assistance. I won't go into the particulars about that, except that she didn't get assistance for about 8 hours. When they finally got her to the hospital, it was in suburban Toledo, realized that her case was too much for them to handle. So they immediately flew her to the Medical College of Ohio, and they did emergency brain surgery, and they had to take blood off of her brain. But by that time, the blood had caused so much pressure on various parts of her brain that had created a traumatic brain injury. Her recovery has been slow. At one point, we had a doctor say, tell us, he was quite honest with us, and I appreciate that. He said, Rachel's recovery is not on a clock, it's on a calendar. And he said, you could be looking at, a 10 to 15 year recovery period for her to get function back to, and she may never get that function back. She's able to talk now. She goes to therapy. She's able to stand. She has trouble walking. Hopefully we'll get there. And one of the biggest regrets I had was I had to leave Toledo to come here, but I had to do that for myself. She was in very good care, and I talk to her regularly. I see her as often as I can. I wish I could be there with her more. But I know she's in good hands, and I keep tabs on her recovery. And the best we can hope for at this point is for her to continue to make her slow progress and hope for a breakthrough. Just keep her alive and strong and keep her comfortable and see these little gains in the hopes that one day there could be a breakthrough that could lead to a big gain. And she's still relatively young. She's 39 years old. There's a whole lot of time there, and there's a whole lot of research being done. And it would, I'm confident, I'm optimistic that we will overcome this, but it's just where we are right now.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's incredible. I'm so sorry I did not know about that. My goodness. You seem to, all of you, face it with as much grace as can be expected. So I guess that leads me to then, well, how has that changed you and as a person and even as a father, or has it not? I imagine it would.
You worry about your kids a lot more. You don't take things for granted. She went to a friend's house and that happened. I with my son, I'm talking to him multiple times a day. I keep tabs on him. I get worried if I don't hear back from him right away. My stepkids, I try to keep tabs on them as much as I can. I'm very proud of all of them. It makes you take a good look at who they are, because who they are is a result of what you did as a parent. But man, I'll tell you, I worry about them a lot more than I ever did before.
I understand that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you do too, Tina, as a mom of 3 boys. I mean, it's really difficult. And I've got 2 olders and 3 littles. And, the bigger they get, the bigger the problems.
Mm-hmm.
And
someone once told me the first 10 years is really hard physically on parents. They're little, so you're, running around and this and that. But then the next 10 years is really hard mentally because, like you said, Anne, the problems get bigger, and now it's more a mental difficulty for the parent versus a physical exhaustion.
I found out a lot of the things that my second oldest daughter did later. And it's like, I'm so glad that I did not know when that was happening. Because I probably would have been like 5 steps behind her everywhere she went. But, that we lived, we made it to adulthood. And sometimes it is really difficult to cut that string and to let them be who they need to be. It can be very scary. I'm so sorry that happened to your daughter.
Well, thank you. I mean, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, I know that none of us get where we are alone. We need that support system. I guess who do you credit with helping you believe in yourself along the way of all of these journeys that we've talked about today, professionally, with your passions, and as a person and a dad?
Most recently, and for the past 20 years, it would be my wife. Her name is Kim. She, and we don't always see eye to eye on things, but I know she's always got my back. And
That's good.
there are times when her counsel is what I need most in life. There are times when her smile is what I need most in life. I have a hard time putting what she means to me in words because this is going to sound odd. I knew she was the one because I'd been through 2 other marriages before. I knew she was the one when on our first date, I found it easy just to sit and watch a movie on TV with her. It was just as simple as that. I felt comfortable. I didn't feel like I had to be anything different. I felt like I was who I was. I was comfortable in my own skin. I felt accepted. And it has been that way for 20 years.
I can relate to that with my husband. I knew the moment I met him, honestly, truly, that he would be the one. Now, we waited 5 years before we got married, but it was that comfort.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
It was 2 years for us. We met online. It was one of those, this is funny. And then we can get back to some of the other stuff. I got called into work. I didn't want to go to work. I told I was living with a landlord out in Rockville, Maryland. I was working in DC. And she had a bad habit. We each had individual phones. It was me and another guy lived upstairs. She lived downstairs. But if she were upstairs and she heard the phone ring, she'd pick it up. Well, she thought she was doing us a favor. And I told her, I said, Sarah, do not answer my phone today. I know there's a guy who's going to call out sick at work. And I know that I'm going to be one of the first people they call to try to get in to fill a shift. It was an overnight shift to produce a Sunday morning newscast. She goes, okay. And like 10 minutes later, the phone rings. I'm in the kitchen. She happened to be up the hallway and I hear the phone stop ringing. George, the phone's it's like, no. So I go and I pick up the phone. It's worked. Hey, had a call out. Can you come in? I'm like, okay, I'll come in. I got a couple hours of sleep, ended up going in, got the newscast produced. I was in a bad mood because I had to be there. In fact, it was 20 years ago today. I'm sitting there around 2:00 in the morning. A commercial comes on for eHarmony. And I'm like, oh, that's a bunch of crap. That stuff doesn't work. And I kept watching and it was a half-hour infomercial. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to spend, they kept talking about for 1 week special, $11. I'm going to spend $11 on lunch next week. Let's check this out. So I go to the website and there's no way this is going to work. This doesn't work. And I do their test and they say, we've got matches for you. And so I pay my $11 and she was the second person I met on eHarmony. And so, yeah, thereby proving me wrong, that stuff did work, at least in my case. So that's how we met. Had a date the next week. We've been together ever since. With the exception of having to work or one of us having to go see relatives or be out of town for something like that, we've been pretty much had contact with each other almost every day, and
that's wonderful.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
Now,
so third time's a charm, huh?
Yeah. now, prior to that, my mom or my dad, my brother's been real supportive. Okay. He and I, Ann knows Harold. Harold, they graduated in the same class. Mm-hmm. Harold and I have different configurations. He was always kind of thin and athletic, and I wasn't. He's kind of a big personality, but in a different way. He's a real take charge sort of guy. I look up to him for that because he always seems to have an answer. And in reality, he and my wife are my best friends. I can still call him. We talk frequently. There's a problem with my sink. I'll call Harold and see what he says. He does the same with me for fishing. So, I mean, what the heck? So
that's what friends are for.
Exactly. And so, that's you want to know those influences right there. Then we talked about teachers before, and again, my mom and dad.
That's beautiful. Wonderful. I've enjoyed this so much. So, George, I just want to say I'm going to have to run. And Ann, I know. Well, George, you're in good hands with Ann, as you know.
Yeah, it was great catching up.
Thanks for being on with us.
Oh, sure, my pleasure.
Okay. I'll see you guys.
I wanted to ask you, George, about your awards and honors that I know that you have received, and talk a little bit about those and what they meant to you.
Of course, I'm a competitive guy, so I've won a variety of awards, dating all the way back: Ohio United Press International Awards, Ohio AP Awards. I won an Emmy for newscast, major market newscast. Actually, one of the ones I'm most proud of is I was named the top broadcast agriculture reporter in the state of Virginia in 2023. And I take a different tact on agriculture reporting. Farmers know where to get the ag report. They don't need me for that. But what they do need me to do is explain their stories to the people who they ultimately serve. And that's the people who they produce or raise food for. So it's a very consumer agriculture sort of focus. And so I take their stories, but I put them into context for consumers. Do a lot of stories in that vein, and I've had a lot of fun with that. So that one was kind of special to me. The Emmy, just because you don't get to win those too often. I've been nominated for others. I was won an award for heritage reporting, Virginia Associated Press. That was a year ago. And that is fun. That's fun for me. And I hear a lot of folks say, I don't care if I win any awards. You know what? I always like that pat on the back. I kind of crave that.
Yeah. Well, when you're as competitive as you are, and you work really hard. So it's really nice to be able to be validated every now and then and say,
Right.
you know what? You're good at what you do.
Right. Right. And that's it. I'm putting a lot of time, 60, 70, 80 hours in a week. Just that's what the job calls for. It is nice when you get to go to that awards banquet and, wave a statue around or whatever. There's a little bit of a payoff there. Everybody's got an ego. I got one. So,
hey, there's nothing wrong with that because you earned it.
I thank you.
I wanted to get a little personal here, because I had, like we said at the very beginning of the podcast, we've known each other forever, it seems like. And I had a hard time in high school, but you were always there. And I want to tell this part of you, kind of paint a picture of who you were then and who I think that you are for our listeners. And because we never ran out of things to talk about. You were like, you could talk about anything, and we would talk for hours and hours, like you said, just walking the hallways or whatever, and you never judged me or anybody. You were just as good as friends with the football players as every other clique in the school, and we had a very cliquey school.
We did.
Yeah. And you would be friends with those who didn't even have friends. You didn't care what anybody thought of. You were just friends with everybody. And I just have to share this because, this is one of my favorite memories. And I think you might know what I'm going to share. But one of the things that we like to do is just get in the car and drive.
Yeah.
And we would drive and talk and, not even think about anything. And then one day we just happened to look up and there was West Virginia.
Yeah.
We were crossing into another state, and it was like, okay, we didn't even kind of realize that we had gone that far, turned around, crossed the state line, turned around and went back home.
I remember that trip. I do. We were driving, and that's what we were doing. We got in the car and we just talked. And I loved talking to you, Annie. It was fun. I felt comfortable with you. I felt, because, as you said, you never judged me. You never ever thought what I said was dumb or whatever. You just let me be me. And that was cool. I remember that whole trip and thinking, how did we get here?
I know. I was like, we're in West Virginia.
It was a great trip. It was great just really spending time with you and talking, because you were so easy to talk to. And I enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah. And it was the same. And, I tell this because, you took a person, and maybe you didn't realize this because you said, you really enjoyed talking to me too. But I was a pretty hurting kid back then. And you showed me how to be free. You accepted me. And, that really meant so much to me because you were a leader in the school. You were that guy in school that I felt that everyone kind of looked to. You were football team, showman, Mr. Personality. You were funny, like everybody liked you. And you proved, because you always seemed to meet everybody where they were. And you did that recently when you met my one son. And it was kind of fun because he's still, well, and he probably will, if he ever sees you again, he's going to hold you to going fishing because he
Yeah,
really wants to go fishing.
we'll go.
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely, that's his thing. But you, right off the bat, and he's not an easy kid to connect with, but he instantly connected with you. And talk about what you mentioned earlier. I told him that you were going to be on, and he's like, "Oh, you mean the one that whispered in my ear? She was my prom date." And I was like, yeah, that one. So, I mean, he just got the biggest kick out of that, but it was really funny. But the point of this was that you connected with him, you've connected with me, many other people along the way. You're just a good person. I
Well,
mean,
thank you.
you talk about your connection with your wife, and I see your pictures of you, your wife, your family, you're fishing, you're cooking, just everything about you are who you are. You're authentically you. You don't fake it. And that's what's so beautiful about who you are. And I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about meeting people where they are. And maybe it's just natural for you.
I consider anybody I meet, I automatically assume they're my friend. And I try
Exactly.
not to judge because we're all weird in our own way. If um, and if you like something and I don't, that's cool because there are a lot of people who like things that I don't. And there are a lot of people who like the same things I do. And but it's also a learning experience. I like to learn from people.
Yes,
And
me too.
I want to know who you are. I want to, it's not anything conscious. I don't come up and think, well, I'm not going to be judgmental. It's just,
It's just who you are.
yeah, it's just what I am. This is what I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's just a beautiful thing. If more people could be like that, could you imagine?
Yeah, yeah. I wish. Yeah, I could. I think though, we're all insecure in our own way, and I think that's how that comes out a lot of times. People try to represent, or
Mm,
they think somebody's judging them, so they're going to judge you first. And you can judge me all you want. I don't care. You know, but it's I can't remember the name of the singer who he said, and this kind of resonated with me. He goes, "I like all of you. I don't hate any of you. For me to hate you, I'd have to get to know you. And
mm,
if I don't
mhm,
know you, how can I find anything not to like
mhm.
about you?
Right, right.
And if I do get to know you, chances are I'm probably going to find something to like about you anyway. So,
Right.
it's just kind of, and again, it's not anything conscious. It's just what I do. It's who I am. I'm not looking to prove anything. So you don't have to prove anything to me. Let's just be who we are and enjoy that.
I just saw this TikTok. I'm into TikTok, and it was like this dad was asking. He had a picture of all these kids, and he just said, which one is, and they were just kind of cartoony, not really, real. But he was a young boy, and he said to him, "So which one of these kids are ugly? Which one of them is pretty? Which one of them is mean? Which one is nice?" And that kind of stuff. And every single one, he was like, "Well, they're all pretty. They're all nice. I don't know if they're mean, and that kind of thing." And his dad was so proud of him because that's the way he saw them,
Right.
And if we really could, and it is a different time, but I remembered with you that you were genuinely open and friendly to every single person. And it didn't matter who they were, where they came from, what walk of life, what they look like, or anything. You were just a beautiful human.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I always saw you as that guy who could be the most successful in school, you know. Um, and I was really impressed that you did go to DC to go to college. And I would listen to you talk about everything. You talk about me not being judgmental about your views or anything. I mean, I just saw you as so smart. So I was just like, you could just spout off anything and everything. And I was just like, wow, he is so smart. So, and I did miss our conversations after you left, but I also knew that you were bound for greatness. So I have to be honest, though, when I saw you were no longer in the newsroom and here you were in the middle of the lake, literally, I was like, I mean, this is so George. This is just so cool. So what could be next for George? Do you know? Is this it? Is this where you land?
There's always, the possibility that in working in this business, I could end up somewhere else. I really like it here in Roanoke.
Hmm.
For what I do, it's pretty centrally located. Again, I'm doing stuff for stations in DC and all over the Mid-Atlantic and in the South. Ideally, I stay here, but who knows? I don't know. I in addition to what I do here, I've been thinking about getting into some documentary film production. Actually, dabbled in writing. I'm a poet. I write poetry.
Oh, that's great.
It's been published. But I'm writing more. And I mean, everybody has that dream. I mean, you've written a book. You know what that's like. I have not yet. I need to. I sometimes feel like I have the need to do that. Here's doing these fishing stories has taken me to some really beautiful places. And I'm trying to find a way to capture that beauty. Were you familiar with like Parts Unknown, the late great Anthony Bourdain, where he would use food as the thread
Yeah.
to introduce you to people and places? I would like to do that
Yes.
with fishing
Oh,
or
that's
the outdoors.
beautiful.
You learn about a place. Fishing is the ticket, but once you're there, you get to learn about these people and their unique cultures and customs and the place and
That's great.
but you're getting there, talking about it and actually formulating an action plan and all that is still down the road a little bit, but it might happen. So I'll keep you in the loop on that one.
Yeah, I really love that. You have another passion, from what I understand, poker.
I played poker semi-professionally for a number of years. Poker is the kind of game, and I was pretty good at it. I won a few things here and there, and I started back in the mid '90s. Poker is the kind of game where you can execute what you need to do perfectly and still lose. And when poker paid the bills after the recession hit, I was lucky if I could work 7 days a month.
Oh no.
So
Wow.
it's just the need for, I was freelancing and full-time journalism jobs got cut because advertising dollars got cut. So I was living in Baltimore, Maryland, working in DC when I could, freelancing, and I would run up to Atlantic City and play in select tournaments or play cash games. I did all right, but you can't. There's an old saying in poker: scared money can't play. Scared money can't play.
Okay.
And what that means is if you're sitting at the table and you're scared to do what you know is the correct thing in a certain situation, then you probably shouldn't be sitting at the table. And when it came down to, okay, the correct play in this situation is to push all in, what I have essentially is next week's groceries and electric and water bill sitting in front of me. And if I push all in, there's a chance I could lose it all. Now I could double up and that would be a good thing, but I could still make the correct play with 3 aces in my hand. And if the guy sitting across from me, who's wanting me to call with an all-in bet has a full house, I'm done. So I had to walk away from it. I still play for fun, but I couldn't take the gut wrenching anymore.
Okay.
And, but you learn from it. You learn sometimes you got to take risks and you learn when you should walk away from something because it's just not right for you.
Right.
So I'll still play. I'll play in friendly tournaments. I look back on it fondly.
Hey, that's what it's all about, right? It's all part of the journey.
Yeah.
We take things with us along the way. So, I mean, and that's what kind of makes it fun. And you've got great memories from it too.
Well, I got to see some cool places. I mean, I got to go to Atlantic City. I got to go to casinos on the Gulf Coast. I got to go to casinos in Nevada. I got to go to casinos and, all over the place, and stay and meet some cool people. I mean, there's a certain honor amongst poker players. Sure, we're all trying to lie to each other to get each other's money at the table, but away from it, they're pretty cool people, and they will help you if you need help. And they're honest in that regard.
It's all part of meeting people, meeting
Right.
all kinds of different people from all walks of life.
Right.
I've watched those poker shows every now and then, and it's really interesting.
There's so much that goes into it. I mean, there's psychology, but there's also math. And I thought I was terrible at math until I actually realized that I wasn't. And that was because I was sitting at a poker table, because you're making multiple calculations every hand that you're in. You're trying to read people. You have to be part psychologist, part sociologist, part mathematician. You're looking at what other people do, and you pick up what are called tells. It's a good life experience. It's not for everybody. But I walked away because I just needed to.
Well, what I get out of this interview with you is that you follow your heart, you follow your passion, and you're never bored. You are never bored.
No, I'm not. I'm always doing something. I'm always finding, but that's also a state of mind. I mean, I do get bored from time to time, but I try not to let myself. Things are always churning up here too. So
yeah, I was going to say, how could you get bored in that mind?
Yeah.
Right?
Sometimes you get lost up here. That's the problem.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, I really appreciate you being on here today, George. This has been really great. I mean, most of the time, if I'm interviewing people, it's people that I don't really know.
Yeah.
And so this is really great that I got to actually revisit a time in my life.
Well, same here. You're a dear friend. I love you dearly. We have known each other for decades.
Yeah.
You still look like you're 18 years old. You're still gorgeous. So, whatever you're doing, keep doing it because it's working. On the other hand, I got to get some hair color, I think.
You're still George. You haven't changed at all. I mean, yes, you have some gray hair now. Yes, you do. But you're still that George that I knew and accidentally ended up in West Virginia with.
Yeah. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate it very much. It's been a blast. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Well, we're going to end it here. And I just want to thank everybody for listening. And as usual, on Real Talk with Tina and Ann, there is purpose in the pain and there is always hope in the journey. So we really thank you again for listening, and we will see you again next time.
Thanks, y'all.